In today's video, we're talking about how you can create a comedy paranormal manga. So in general, when we first look at creating a paranormal or a supernatural manga, we first want to consider the paranormal elements. What is in your story that makes it fit into the paranormal genre? Now, paranormal can cover a wide variety of different topics. It can talk about ghosts and spirits, it can talk about urban legends and myths, it can talk about supernatural powers, or it can talk about other supernatural beings that you may wish to include in your story. Now, to bring in the comedy element when we're introducing the paranormal aspects of your story, maybe when the ghost or spirit is introduced, they are not what your character may have assumed. And this is why when you first start with an urban legend or a myth, maybe your character has an idea in mind of what this character may be like, only to find that this character is someone very different, but someone who still has an interesting and amusing personality. The second thing you want to do is you want to set the tone and atmosphere. When you're creating a paranormal series, the tone and atmosphere is really important. But then when we're blending this with comedy, you may have moments that feel more serious and ominous, only to break that suspense by including more comical moments. To build atmosphere in battle scenes, for example, you may build up the scene making it feel like the character is outnumbered, only for them to unleash a surprisingly powerful ability that maybe they hadn't realized they had before. But when you present these abilities, if you want this to appear a bit more comical, try and focus on the way that your character uses these abilities in a surprising or unexpected way. When you do this when you're setting the tone and atmosphere in your story, you can then build up scenes that feel ominous and suspenseful, but then break those heavier moments by having moments of comedy as well. Number 3 is that you want to develop a strong protagonist. The protagonist is one of the most important characters in any series, and in this type of genre, it's no exception. Now, when we're looking at paranormal blended with comedy, there are a few types of protagonist characters that are most typically shown. In most cases, the protagonist will be someone who is an underdog at the beginning of the story. There's someone who has struggled a lot with different things throughout their life, but they suddenly discover that they have some kind of hidden power or ability, and they are able to use these hidden powers and abilities to protect the people they care about. Usually when it's written for the shonen demographic, this would mean that the character unlocks a number of level ups or power ups throughout the series, so they level with the series. They begin with basic powers and abilities that they might not know how to control, but then throughout the series they learn more ways to be able to control these powers and abilities until they become someone who is really strong, almost overpowered. Now, some other kinds of protagonists that you might see might be the protagonist who is actually really scared of the paranormal things. Now, usually this can be combined in some ways with the other way of writing the protagonist, but in a lot of cases when you're creating a paranormal series mixed with comedy, the protagonist will be someone who is actually really scared of ghosts, and then they're suddenly put in a situation where they need to interact with ghosts or supernatural characters more often, and this can be really scary for them. And usually in this instance as well, maybe the side character or the secondary protagonist would be a ghost character, so having that banter between the protagonist that's actually terrified of ghosts and spirits, and then having the deuteragonist, the secondary main character, be a spirit, can be a really interesting dynamic to have. And while the deuteragonist character will usually act as a foil, showing the opposite traits of the protagonist, in a paranormal series mixed with comedy, the secondary main character will usually be someone who is lighthearted and really eccentric about the topics that they are interested in. And so this kind of dynamic where you have a protagonist who may sometimes be more serious alongside the secondary main character who may be more comical, this can create a really interesting balance. So it's all about the balance. If you have more of a comical main character, then you may have more of a serious secondary main character. Finding that balance can be helpful in providing more comical moments in your story. Number 4 is build the world around the paranormal. So as we mentioned earlier, the paranormal can cover a wide variety of different topics, but when you're creating the world in your story that is centered around the paranormal or supernatural, you want to ensure that these elements make sense in the world. So you might have a world where there is the two different realities. You have the normal reality, and then you have the reality where you have the supernatural and paranormal. And this way of world building is not only commonly shown in paranormal series, but it's also commonly shown in supernatural series as well. The likely way that this scenario goes is that your character unlocks some hidden abilities and powers, but with this comes the ability to also be able to see the other reality. So now the character with their newly found powers is able to see the spirits or supernatural characters that exist in the other side. And so throughout the story, especially if you're including this with comedy themes, your character is able to interact and see these supernatural characters, whereas other characters can't, and that may lead to some very interesting or surprising moments. Number 5 is use shadows or lighting to create atmosphere. When creating a manga, the shading is most important in order to build that atmosphere in the scene, but you can also do this quite effectively through cross-hatching, which is what I use for my own graphic novel, Having Faith. If you're interested in creating your own paranormal series, you might be interested in my book, Sometimes Imaginary Friends Don't Want to Be Imaginary. Having Faith tells the story of what it means to grow up, make friends, and fall in love, all while trying to overcome the fears we create in our own minds. It's available on webtoons, in bookstores, and in libraries. So let's talk a bit more about how to use shadows and lighting to create atmosphere. Now, as I mentioned, you can use cross-hatching, which not only provides the shadows in the scene, but also provides texture to your manga pages as well. But shadows and lighting can be particularly helpful when you want to shift the tone in the scene. Basically, every scene will have its own tone, and this is the feeling that the scene gives when the audience is reading the scene. If you want to shift the tone quickly, you can change the shading in the scene. So when you're building up the pacing in the scene and building it up in an ominous way, if you want to shift the tone, you can change the lighting and make it something brighter. And this can help you to shift from more serious moments to more comedy moments more easily. When you're thinking about building the atmosphere in your story, another very helpful technique is to use the proportions and perspective to your advantage. Usually in particularly shonen manga, when there are battle scenes, usually the writer will use really unique angles in order to show the intensity of the battle scene. But when you're creating unique characters in your story, think about how you can use distorted perspectives in order to present those characters in a new way. For example, when you first introduce a new character in your story, maybe you use an unsettling perspective or draw them with very strange proportions in order to make the character seem unsettling, only for the characters to later realize that the more they talk to this character, the more they learn that this character is not as scary as they may have first assumed. These distorted proportions can help to give your audience their own first impressions of the character before you turn things around and show what the character is actually like. With this as well, sound effects are also really helpful to use, and I recommend making the sound effect look how it sounds. So have fun really drawing these sound effects and trying to make them go across panels and really stand out in your scene. And use exaggerated sound effects as well. Don't just write the sound effects in the normal way. Consider if there are ways you can really change the words or make them really unique to your story. But you can also do this for funny or light-hearted moments as well. When you're having a more comedy moment, see how you can add sound effects to really boost that comedy in the scene. When it comes to creating your paranormal and supernatural series mixed with comedy, it's important to think about the little stories that may happen that really bring your world to life. Usually in this kind of genre, it's not simply a matter of your character working from A to B and going from beginning to end. Usually they'll experience some unique situations along the way, and this not only helps them to grow as a character, but it also helps them to learn more about the paranormal world around them. Usually these situations include mysteries that may seem sudden or unexpected. Maybe because of their newfound abilities, they learn more about the world than they realized, and they discover new things about characters they thought they understood. Maybe because of their abilities, they're the only one that can really help to save the day and find other characters to work with. Usually because of the protagonist's newfound abilities and powers, they are the only one who may be able to help where other characters can't. And usually the way to solve the mystery and save the day will be to use their abilities to see into the paranormal and supernatural world that only they can understand. Some other plots might be that your character discovers someone, or they themselves gain some very dangerous powers and abilities, and they need to learn how to control these abilities. In this as well, this may come with some minor conflict characters, where these characters might have such powerful abilities that your character needs to learn how to work with these characters and ensure that the balance is maintained between their world and the supernatural world. Through your character going on these plots and smaller adventures throughout the story, they'll usually find some unexpected allies and friends that they meet along the way. These characters will likely have their own goals, but with working with the protagonist, they learn new ways to get along and achieve their respective goals in the story. If you want your paranormal series to be more like Dandadan, I recommend taking inspiration from myths or urban legends in a respectful way. Look at some myths or urban legends that might interest you and think about how you could change these in a particular way and present them in your story in a new and unique concept. You can think about how your protagonist may come across one of these characters and learn that these myths and legends were not quite as accurate as they may have believed. Using this as inspiration can help your readers to feel like they are going on an adventure and discovering new things along with your characters. Create paranormal relationships. When you're building the characters in your story, create relationships that make sense for the world and the characters you're including. When we're balancing the paranormal genre with comedy, these characters can be sometimes comical or help to build the humor in situations. Your character may make friends with some unlikely allies, like a ghost for example, and if the character is scared of ghosts, as we mentioned before, this can create some very interesting dynamics in your story. And finally, let's talk about the unique themes in the paranormal genre. When presenting your paranormal series mixed with some comedy, these are some themes that are most commonly presented that you may want to present in a unique way in your story. Usually these themes include focusing on the two separate worlds and how these worlds are different, the reality that your character is living in, and then the supernatural world on the other side. Finding that balance may be something that is difficult for your characters the more they learn about both worlds or travel between both worlds. There may also be themes of the fear of the unknown. Your character may be forced into situations that they previously would have feared, and throughout the story they gain more bravery the more that they force themselves to face the things that they were previously afraid of. There may also be themes of redemption or revenge, and especially if you're creating ghost or spirit characters, maybe these characters at first wanted revenge or redemption, but maybe throughout the story they gain peace through working with your character. Overall, the balance of life and what is beyond it may be something that is very important to focus on in your story. The experience that your character has and the experiences that the supernatural characters around them have. How these two worlds balance or collide, and how your character learns to interact with the unique characters that they meet along the way. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of paranormal series you're creating, because I would love to hear about it, and I'm sure others would love to hear about it too. Visit my website midnightscross.com for resources, templates and workbooks that can help you to level up your story. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!